Welcome Cancer to your in-depth monthly horoscope for October 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Please do take advantage of your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data. If you order it now, you can get the rest of year 2024 free, plus your life roadmap report and 30% off. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month, which always proves very influential. We need to be mindful of your ruler, the moon. It's in the sign of Virgo, which for you is about quick communication. The sign of Virgo, the host, about precision. The problem is that Saturn on the other side of the heavens is broadly opposite the moon. You may find at some point this month that however much you're trying to connect to someone else or communicate with their needs in mind, they're not quite as impressed as you might like. So just be aware that Saturn can bring a little bit of a cooling breeze to communications. But in terms of the solar eclipse, which occurs across the second or third of the month, depending on where you live, it's very close to Mercury. And in fact, as September came to a close, you may have had some sparkling ideas about what you wanted to do with where you live. And those ideas don't necessarily have to play out this month, because the solar eclipse provides a backdrop energy for the next half year. It's just that the lunar eclipse in September was really pushing you to expand your world, very much to do with travel, adventure, information, education or philosophy. And yet this homey influence, which is very much in keeping with your core nature, is what dominates in terms of the solar eclipse. Which of those two eclipses will get the upper hand, or can you weave them together? For example, if you are thinking about relocating your home base to somewhere completely different that really fits your needs, that would be a great way to surf the combination. But clearly with Mercury so close to the Sun, it's possible that anything to do with a home-based business, the technological side of your situation, or your communication with family members can be an important part of this month's story. But I take you back to that moon opposition with Saturn. So it is going to be important, despite that Mercury combination with the solar eclipse, and you thinking about where you live, how you live there and who with, and there is the potential for some breakthroughs in terms of renovations or finding the home you really want. It is still going to be important to understand that not everybody may seem to be quite as enthusiastic about your plans as you would like. But as this month begins, Cancer, Venus is in a sparkling location for you. The fifth house is going to become busy for you this month. Mercury and the Sun are moving there. And the fifth house is where we can be more outgoing, more playful, and more sociable. So that's something to really look forwards to. And Venus does forge, ironically, a very constructive link with Saturn through the first week of this month. I feel if you do need to have a heart-to-heart with someone, and there is going to be some important issues discussed, the chances are you can express your ideas in a way which is both sincere and meaningful, but also help to get across why you may be developing a particular plan, particularly if you are wanting to change something around your life. But on the 9th, Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism and fortune, does go into its annual 4-month retrograde. Now, until Jupiter enters your sign on the 9th of June 2025, it is going through your 12th house. 12th house energy can be to do with deep spiritual healing. It can be to do with the spiritual domain, and the sign of Gemini is one that's very much to do with quick communications. Things could slow down therefore with Jupiter retrograde here, but it also gives you an opportunity to check out some of your beliefs, which is what Jupiter influences as well. But the 12th house in traditional astrology can be about those people who don't have our best interests at heart. those hidden enemies. And Jupiter can be about the way that philosophies can be expressed, but sometimes dogmas. So you may find yourself through to the early part of February next year rethinking some of your philosophies, or reading some books or watching videos online that help to expand your outlook in some very deep and meaningful ways. Now, right at the heart of this month, we do have a lot of action. Pluto ends its retrograde, which began in May, but initially it still retains its status in your 7th house of relating. If we think about the big picture back to 2008 when Pluto first went there, there probably has been some significant entries, but also levers in terms of your relationships. Pluto can be about power, but it's also the planet of consequences. So it's not just about how other people are to us, it's also about how we are to them. And through to the 19th of November, when Pluto does re-enter your 8th house, it is going to be important to keep working at understanding the politics of your interactions, because Cancer, you can be a very powerful sign. You are a cardinal sign. That means you have executive leadership skills, and to be honest, Cancer is a brilliant, often marvelous manager of people. But in terms of your boundaries, that's what Pluto's asking you to think about here. And interestingly, Venus, despite being in that very sociable, even romantic part of your chart at the start of the month, does go into an opposition with the potentially erratic energies of Uranus from the 12th through to the 17th. Now, on the 14th, they're going to be exact. If you're single, that could bring someone into your world very, very suddenly, who you could find to be very interesting indeed. Whether this person would turn out to be someone that you would have a brief fling with, or someone who'd stick around for a longer association, really depends on you and your unique situation. However, in an existing relationship, it's an aspect which can create some restlessness, but also a need for excitement. So because Pluto goes direct in your sector of relating, if something has been a bit stuck, particularly since the 2nd of September, when Pluto inverted back into Capricorn and your 7th house, this is an opportunity for you to reimagine how you can connect with your partner, loved one, the friends that you have that bring the greatest amount of uplift to your world. But on the 13th, Mercury moves into the sign of Scorpio. For you, the 5th house is where Mercury is much more playful, can even be a bit mischievous. Your sense of humour can seem to come back to life, but it is clashing immediately with Pluto. And the reason for this is Pluto is so late in Capricorn, we can almost imagine it being in Aquarius. So for you, this is almost like a 5th, 8th house aspect. So when it comes to relationships, especially with Venus and Uranus in that opposition, if you are actually feeling quite penned in, and someone seems to be very much wanting to control your interests, your friendships, your time, that could see you very rebellious at that particular point. Now, if you cast your mind back to mid-July 2023, the North Node, the point of destiny for you, inverted into your sector of success. We've also had the solar eclipse this year that's been reinforcing that push to raise your profile and be much more ambitious and single-minded about what you want to get from situations. But on the 17th, the Aries full moon may give you the opportunity to push on with that, but it is squaring up with Mars in your sign. That's a mighty T-square between the position of the Sun and the Moon. So the Sun's in your 4th house of home, emotion, family, reflected by the solar eclipse at the start of the month, but the Moon in the 10th house. When the Moon's in the 10th house, it's very, very difficult to disguise how we feel. Even if you are someone who has a preference for keeping things a little bit more confidential. So if you have got some bubbling frustrations going on, particularly in terms of your work-life balance, you may find it much more difficult to contain those frustrations over the following 2 weeks. On the 17th, Venus moves into the sign of Sagittarius. Venus here is a bit of a truth seeker, but it also can give us an appreciation of links with overseas, travel, and if you are heading off on a holiday, it could turn out to be very restorative for you, certainly initially. It's just that the problem is that as Venus moves forwards, it does clash with Saturn in the last week of this month. And it's possible that you may feel a bit oppressed if your need for freedom and space is conflicted in some ways by another person or people's demand for you to produce something for them. So that can also create some frustrations. On the 22nd, the Sun moves into your sister water sign of Scorpio. It's a great place for the Sun to be for you personally, but again, like Mercury, it squares with Pluto, and we need to think about that 5-8 angle again. So if you are feeling a bit hemmed in, particularly around a relationship, Venus's opposition with Uranus, Pluto going direct, and Pluto squaring with Mercury and the Sun suggest that some politics that have been simmering beneath the surface may need to come up and really be explored. And all of it can happen in the last week of this month. This is when your cardinality, your leadership qualities can really be emphasized. Because although Pluto going direct is asking you to think about the politics of your relationship since 2008, when it first went into Capricorn, as Mars goes opposite Pluto in the last week, if you are still feeling a sense of injustice about anything, you may find that a part of your nature is activated which really doesn't come out very often, and it could be strident frustration almost all the way to outright anger. Now, you have a reputation for avoiding outright conflict. You would prefer not to get involved in those one-to-one situations, but Mars is really changing the whole dynamic, and because it's going to be in the part of your chart which is to do with your ego and your identity through to the 4th of November, and returning back there on the 6th of January through to the 18th of April next year, this very extended period of Mars in your sign could make you or see you change your approach and become much more assertive. Now, if you still use some tactics in order to make your points, perhaps the other person will hear. But if you push too hard, it could actually create a lot of hostility. So I think the potential for some choppy conditions around all sorts of relationships is quite strong towards the end of this month. But I must stress, it's possible that you do need to stand up some of your points of view, particularly if you have been, as you see it, bending over backwards to make sure that everybody else's needs are addressed, and you're very supportive of them because you can be ultra nurturing. So it may be an opportunity to redress the balance, both the full moon and also Mars's opposition with Pluto towards the end of this month. But if you do want a bit more of a playful time of it and be a bit freer and break free from some restrictions, you also have that opportunity towards the end of October too. Have a great month. And do please check out that year 2025 personal horoscope forecast offer. You'll get the rest of this year free, but also 30% off with your life roadmap report, all based totally on your unique birth data, and great value too. Please see the link below for more.